Hello, everyone. It is good to see you all today. Thank you so much for being here with all of us. Many of you already know me, but for any new friends or colleagues on the call, I'm Katrina Rogers. I'm the president of Fielding Graduate University. As we continue to host 50th anniversary events this year, I've been inspired by so many of our community members' stories. And so today, I'm particularly pleased to be able to be part of commemorating the release of our 50th anniversary monograph, The Transformative Power of Learning. This monograph is a collection of unique stories and narratives written by our graduates and colleagues, faculty, and others about their educational journey at Fielding, very particular about and very personal stories. And I want to thank all of you on this call who made a contribution to this work. Having read the monograph, one of our Fielding trustees, and some of you will know him, our graduate, Dr. John Bennett, he shared with me the following. He said, the monograph is a terrific perspective about the impact that Fielding has had on the lives of so many, including me, from his perspective. And however, he said, the purpose of the monograph is also for anyone who's considering an advanced degree today and the transformative potential this journey could have in anyone's life. And I think that does come down to the essence of Fielding, that there is a sense of the possibility of on the road to becoming a scholar and a scholar practitioner, or as some in some fields say, a practitioner scholar. There is also a sense that learning in this way, in this very deep experiential way, is also an opportunity for transformation. It's not just about content mastery, which is important, building those skills and capabilities of scholarship. It's also about our willingness and openness to engage our hearts in this journey. And so I'm very pleased to see this volume. It's a delight to read. I've read it more than once. I was honored to write the foreword to this volume. Anniversaries to me are also times in which we look both forward and backward. I like to think it's an opportunity to assess where we've been for Fielding, but also understand our own hope and aspirations for a brighter future that is full of purpose and collective action. And I think all the different kinds of messages that we receive in the world today, this moment to reflect is an important one. And that's why one of the motivators for having a call like this today. We use this past to guide us. We're also reminded that we must remain steadfast, if you will, in both our present and our future to achieve Fielding's mission for a more just, sustainable world. In addition to Fielding's 50th anniversary, though, Fielding University Press is celebrating 10 years this year. For a decade, Fielding University Press has published volumes highlighting our partnerships with the Navajo Nation. We've also done work in emerging trends in higher education, in online learning, in leadership for sustainability, in clinical health psychology, just to name a few topics. Each author is special and important for sharing the scholarship and practice within all of these pages. Dr. Jean-Pierre Isbouts, I'm particularly grateful to you, who came to me many years ago suggesting that we start this press, despite some of the headwinds that academic presses don't do well. Our press has done extraordinarily well in the new age of publishing. And it's really to your credit, Jean-Pierre, and to all of our colleagues who've participated in publications over the years. In addition, you may not be aware that Dr. Isbouts has also directed a film that accompanies the monograph called The Voices of Fielding. And we have an opportunity for you to view that if you'd like. We'll put that film in the chat. As I mentioned in the foreword, Fielding has an educational model I always thought of it when I first came to Fielding in the faculty in the Human and Organizational Development program, that it's three legs to that stool. Community, we build a community of scholars, of learners. Flexibility, it's structure within it's flexibility within a framework. and quality, the quality, engagement, and education. These tenets not only guide us as an institution of higher learning, but I think of them as tenets that help guide us about our own roles and relationships inside and outside of Fielding, the power of community, the importance of flexibility, flexible mind, flexible thinking, particularly in times of volatility and ambiguity. And then, of course, bringing in our relationships, whether they be professional, personal, an integrity, equality to those relationships. And although we will never truly know the future, we do know this: Fielding is a place of transformation. And once you begin your path here, you are forever changed for the better, is our aspiration, is our hope. And I hope you will find today, as you listen to the authors and as you read The Transformative Power of Learning, that you will find your own path forward. And I also want to extend a thank you to each of our speakers beforehand. Thanks for being here, for sharing your chapters and being present with us. All doctors, we have Doctors Zivia Konvisser, Sergey von Middentrop, Talia Bragg, Carrie Arnold, and Tracy Gibbons. All of you whom I know. I look forward to hearing more from you today. And now I will turn the program over to Jean-Pierre. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. Thank you for this wonderful introduction, and welcome to our 1-hour celebration of the transformative power of learning. Elena Nicholson and I have worked on this book for, what is it, over a year, Elena? And it's been a wonderful experience collecting all of these experiences. Before we go talk a little bit more about that, I'm just going to share the screen for a little bit and show you a few things. It's, as Dr. Rogers said, it's our 10-year anniversary of Fielding University Press, in which we've somewhere, I was going to count them and I forgot, I think somewhere between 35 and 40 books have been published in these 10 years, which is for a small university press, which is a large number. Just this last year, we published 5 wonderful books, part of which were funded by our new endowment for alumni publications. This is an endowment started by Dr. Pauline Albert, for which we are very, very grateful. And it continues to be supported by Pauline as well as Fielding. Elena is a major driving force behind this endowment, and it allows us to publish the work not only of scholars, not only Fielding scholars, but we have published the work of over 100 scholars all over the world, not just Fielding faculty, but scholars all over the world, in addition to the work of students and alumni working with our Fielding faculty. What the endowment made possible, however, is that we can publish the dissertation work of one particular alumnus or alumna. And so you see, for example, that the Sexual Misconduct Prevention Guidebook was published by Dr. Laura McGuire. Leadership Starts With You was published by Whitney Breer, who is in her final doctoral phase. And Struggling with Infertility, which is an incredibly powerful book, just came out last week. So it's hot off the press, published by, written by Dr. Sharon E. Schoenteich, with a foreword by Drexel University's Dr. Pamela Geller. And that book has garnered so many wonderful pre-press endorsements from people throughout the medical community, the psychoanalytical community, about the problem of infertility, which is really not acknowledged to the extent that it should. And Sharon's work is a wonderful, wonderful way to, based on her dissertation research, to bring case studies to the general readership about the terrible struggles that couples and individual mothers face when they try to become pregnant. These are just the last 5 books that we've published. We're in development now on another endowment book, Parents and Teachers, by Andras Versage, which is a wonderful book about, and so timely too, now that we're talking about, to what extent can parents determine what students read in school and other issues related to school education. That book is in development right now, and we hope to publish it this summer. And there are many other exciting titles in development right now. As Dr. Rogers said, a boutique university press is not supposed to be profitable. That's not our goal. We want to bring important books to the general readership all over the world. But we do have bona fide bestsellers. These are just 5 of our bestsellers. These are books that are recouped their investment and are doing extremely well. Of course, authors share in those royalties. We have a very radical strategy in that we invite our authors to share in any post-recoupment royalties 50-50. So if the book does well, the author does well, feeling that everybody does well. It's a win-win for everyone. And these are books that have really been exceptionally successful in the marketplace. The Sexual Misconduct Prevention Guidebook is now being used as a required text at several universities in the United States. And we have other books like Colorism, for example, that have been adopted as textbooks by universities. Anyway, that is just a very quick view on what we've been doing these last 10 years, and God willing, we'll be able to do this for many, many more years to come. And now over to transformative power. Elena, do you remember how we came up with this idea?
Yes, of course. Thank you for that prompt, Dr. Zbautz. But before I answer that question, I want to follow our tradition that we've had for several years now. This event specifically is considered a public event, and it's our tradition that when we have a public event at Fielding, whether virtual or in person, we always include land acknowledgement as part of our opening remarks. So we are very lucky to have our VP of DI, Dr. Alison Davis White-Eyes, with us here today to offer the land acknowledgement.
Oh, thank you so much, Elena, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And I would like to invite you all to drop in the chat where you're calling in from or zooming in from, the indigenous lands upon which you reside or where you're visiting. Be nice for us to share that together. And let me just remind you that Fielding Graduate University affirms and honors our commitment to Indigenous communities as the original stewards of the lands that we all inhabit. As a graduate learning community founded on the values of social and ecological justice, we recognize the deep history, critical sovereignty, expansive scholarship, and ecological knowledge of Indigenous nations around the world. We honor their elders, both past and present, as well as their future generations of emerging leaders. As a globally distributed learning institution, Fielding avows the following. We commit ourselves to promoting educational opportunities in partnership with Indigenous peoples worldwide who are interested in advancing educational and professional opportunities in Fielding's areas of expertise. We commit ourselves to consulting and cooperating in good faith with Indigenous peoples through their own representative institutions in order to provide opportunities for knowledge production or any other project affecting their lands, territories, or knowledge resources. We commit ourselves to promoting and protecting the rights of Indigenous peoples by actively promoting the scholarship of Indigenous communities through Fielding University Press to advance knowledge and provide venues for knowledge production and dissemination. We recognize and acknowledge that traditional knowledge cannot be separated from natural and cultural resources, and as such, all Indigenous knowledge should be protected and respected. By centering Indigenous communities, their knowledge, tradition, and worldviews, we are working in partnership in order to enhance the next generation of Indigenous leadership committed to building a more just and sustainable world. Thank you all, and now I turn this back over to Elena Nicholson and Jean-Pierre Isbou.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Allison. And just to pick up where we've left, how did we come up with the Transformative Power of Learning title? I do have several stories like we have at Fielding, but I'll be brief. I think when we started to think, what can we do to celebrate Fielding's 50th anniversary, and what kind of publications could we produce to commemorate this major milestone in our university's lives? We thought about the beginnings of the life of the university and the vision for what kind of education Fielding would offer to its students. And so, of course, we know that transformative experience is something that every Fielding graduate experiences as they go through their education. However, we also often hear is that Fielding is sometimes the best kept secret in the world. So how can we inspire people to consider adult education, consider graduate education, and consider what amazing gifts education gives to ones in their lives, but also to their families and the community? And so while the monograph contains the stories of Fielding graduates, this book is also designed for people seeking opportunities in higher education, working in higher education industry, and anybody who might be considering that higher education that is now a dream might become a reality for them, which is also true for our wonderful authors. Each of them have their own transformative education experience. Each of them has their own path and story, but together they create the tapestry that Fielding is. And without further ado, Dr. Isbouts, if you don't have any other comments, I will pass it on to our first speaker.
Let's do that. Let's hear from our speakers.
All right, thank you. So our first speaker is Dr. Ziva Conviser, who is a doctoral graduate, PhD, from our Human and Development Program in 2006. Dr. Conviser, the mic is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. My chapter is Pursuing My Noble Goal. Over the years, my journey of self-exploration, personal transformation, reflection, and growth helped me define my noble goal, my passion, my purpose, and my legacy. To make a positive difference in people's lives and the communities in which they live and work. How might I take this further into my personal life, my community, the world, or the planet as I approached retirement from my 25-year automotive career? Synchronously, in June 1999, I was invited to a focus group to assess Fielding's proposal to create a consulting and research arm within the automotive industry. Fielding was introduced as a distributed learning university for adult students established in their careers, granting PhDs in human and organizational development, and educating leaders, scholars, and practitioners for a more just and sustainable world. Fielding's vision, research, and learning model were based on core beliefs and values that immediately resonated with my own values: academic excellence, community, diversity, learner-centered education, social justice, and transformational learning. Suddenly, the light came on for me. I could not douse it. It was burning even brighter. I left the meeting knowing that this was my future. Despite my girlfriend's advice to lay down and rest until the feeling passes, I applied and was accepted into the cohort that began in September 2000. And so I became a student again at age 57. During the next 6 years, the Fielding community of faculty, administration, staff, students, and alumni recognized, valued, and encouraged my research and traveled with me on this ongoing journey. Following graduation from Fielding in 2006, I continued my journey with Fielding as a postdoctoral researcher and later as a fellow of the Institute for Social Innovation. Fielding provided me with the freedom, framework, and faculty to explore my options, appreciate my values and humanism, and look deeper into what makes us human. For my research, I wanted to learn from the Holocaust survivors in my own family, as well as those with whom I had walked and dialogued in the summer of 1995 at the Turning Point International Leadership Intensive held at Auschwitz-Birkenau on the 50th anniversary of the liberation of the camps, how they were able to find meaning and growth in the aftermath of suffering. A trip to Israel in October 2002, at the height of the Second Intifada, helped me connect what I had learned about Holocaust survivors to Israel, Palestine, and the Middle East conflict, and the ordinary people who suddenly found themselves victims of terrorism. These two life-changing or transformational experiences, as well as the histories of my own family, compelled me to want to examine these areas more deeply. Through the lenses of Viktor Frankl's logotherapy, his humanistic and existential approach to healing through meaning that stresses the freedom to transcend suffering and the defiant power of the human spirit to make choices and embrace life. And also the more recent work of Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun, who coined the term post-traumatic growth to describe the positive psychological change that can be experienced as a result of the struggle with a highly challenging life circumstance. To answer my questions, I turned to 63 survivors of terror, family members, bereaved family members, and injured soldiers in Israel. In their moving stories, they shared the remarkable life journeys from terror to hope and from grief to meaning, not just moving on with life as usual, but moving forward in their lives, contributing to society, and turning tragedy into action or activism to become their fullest and deepest selves. In late 2006, I was invited to build upon what I learned with these survivors and to explore the human impact of wrongful conviction on the life of a wrongfully convicted person and the lives of their loved ones. Again, from my perspective of the possibility of positive change alongside the lasting effects of their traumatization, and that hope and meaning might be found after struggling with and surviving any life crisis. Throughout my journey, I have discovered that the meaning of my life as both a story listener and a storyteller is to help those who have been silenced by trauma find meaning in their lives by giving voice to their lived experiences and emotions. 25 years later, the light still burns brightly, and Fielding is still traveling alongside me, providing the lifelong learning community in which to pursue my noble goal. It is a deeply sensed shared feeling of communitas, of belonging and community, which continues to bring me back for my Fielding fix and the opportunity to join my academic friends for intellectual stimulation and community building. Thank you, Fielding.
Thank you so much, Dr. Conviser, for sharing your chapter and your story. We to be mindful of time, we will have our authors speak first, but save your questions to the second portion of this event. And also, you can put them in the chat, and we'll answer. The authors will answer them in the order received. And the next speaker is the doctoral graduate from our Human and Organizational Systems 2016, Dr. Sergey van Middendorp. And what's very special that Dr. Sergey is also our international graduate. So we've tried to show diverse perspectives from across the world in this book presentation today. Welcome, Dr. Sergey van Middendorp. The mic is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Elena. And hello, colleagues, friends. It's really great to see you all and be together. When I thought about what I wanted to say, I was also thinking about the past, the present, and the future. But in this case, the present would be my fielding program and a story leading up to that, a story from being in the program, and a story about the afterlife. And when I thought about this first part, coming to fielding, the key word that came to my mind is synchronicity. So I had several people guiding me on my journey to find fielding. I was working in a software service supplier as a strategist, struggling with my language to engage our people to work with value networks. And Charles Savage, one of the guides on my path, challenged me on my language. And not much later, I found myself with a jazz band, exploring the metaphor of improvisation and how that would help us as an organization to deal with these abstract concepts of supporting different organizations working together to achieve a groove, just like a jazz band would achieve a groove. And when I was challenged by some other people to see if I could do a PhD with that, and looking for programs, Charles Savage again pointed me to fielding. I was a bit skeptical at first because in the Netherlands, you can do your PhD for free, but I looked at the website nevertheless, and there was Frank Barrett staring me in the face. Actually, someone whose work I'd been working with for a few years at that point. Well, several such synchronicities sort of made me realize that there was no other way than to go. And when I was accepted, I was really happy to discover my second home. So during my program, becoming a PhD, as we say in our community, the word that comes to mind to frame this episode is reflexivity. So Fred Steyer, still a good friend and colleague, is a scholar who did a lot on that term. And it's something I really learned to appreciate, both being in the community of scholars, practitioners, the faculty, the communitas, as Jeva just mentioned, the feeling of being in community together. The challenges, the books, the enormous amounts of knowledge and love that are presented, and that whole experience was so much in line with who I am, my values, my emerging learning, that this feeling of coming home only got reinforced and made me help make a major shift in my thinking. The shift from working with the metaphor of improvisation to improvising with metaphors. That was a real liberation in my intellectual development. And as I am now in the afterlife of the program, I'm still learning what that means. And that's one of the things that I'm eternally grateful for, to Fielding, to our community. The idea of lifelong learning, of knowing only so much, and the mystery, the questions, and the empowerment, I think, that the resulting humility gives me to keep engaging and keep wondering what all this means. Now, as an activist in the climate movement, also supporting the Dutch healthcare system in a transformation to become more focused on health than illness. Wondering as a fellow at our Institute for Social Innovation what it takes to create healthy, open systems. The gifts of critical theory, intersectionality, social justice, decolonizing and reconstructing epistemologies, all these things that were really unfamiliar for me as a Dutchman coming into our program. I'm eternally grateful. And the best way I hope to frame this last part of my story is eternal recurrence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Van Middendorp, so much for your presentation. Our next speaker is our recent graduate from Clinical Psychology program, Dr. Talia Bragg. She's also founding president of our Black Student Association and the winner as a student, as well as a recent graduate of many awards by the APA. So Dr. Bragg, the floor is yours and the mic.
Thank you. So I just want to give the warning that I probably am going to go over that 5 minutes, and I'm probably going to be a little emotional. So, you know, just to set up what I'm going to say. First, I always start everything with gratitude, and I have to give some well-deserved thank yous, starting with President Rogers and Provost Williams and Vice President Davis White Eyes, and of course you, Elena, and Kaylin. All of you have been a part of my fielding journey, some from the very beginning, but nonetheless significant, valuable, and meaningful. And I thank you for continuing to think of me and providing me opportunities to elevate my story, my voice, and my mission for social justice and equity, especially for Black communities. And I also want to thank my fellow authors, your vision, your voices and stories. I haven't read the entire book, but I've read about half of it right now. And it's so powerful what each of you have shared. And I'm honored to be a co-author with you. So I'm not going to necessarily speak about the story that I've shared. I want to focus my comments today on why I wrote the story. It was at a very difficult time when I was first approached to do this story. I actually I said yes and kind of didn't want to because it was too soon to tell it for several reasons. But I realized in that time of grief that it was important to share the story for several reasons. And the first reason why will explain the reasons why I had some dread. The first reason that, and probably the most important, is that I needed to tell my story to honor my ancestors. My ancestors are descendants of chattel enslavement here in the US. I don't know beyond that, but I know I can trace it back very far to the earliest part of the 19th century. And I also have a significant amount of relatives that were lost in the Trail of Tears. The dream of education was either never dreamt or pursued due to Jim Crow America. And as such, on both sides of my family, the women became either teen parents or teen brides or both. And if they finished high school, they never went further. And as such, there are 4 ancestors that I have that are very significant to my journey of even creating the impetus for me to want to pursue higher education. First is my maternal grandfather, Mr. Harold Arnett Smiley. He helped me learn how to dream big. There was never a dream that I could never tell him that was unreasonable or impractical or impossible to him. And as I learned, as I tried to fulfill those dreams, it did seem that way to other people. Secondly is my paternal uncle, Mr. Robert Charles Bragg Jr. He inspired me in his life and struggles to pursue a career in clinical neuropsychology very early in my collegiate endeavors. And then there's my mother, Ms. Lillian Carol Smiley Carr Bragg, who was very emphatic. She herself was a teen bride and emphatically declared that if she were to have kids, all of them are going to graduate from college. And she is the only child on either side of my family who's fulfilled that. And last is my maternal grandmother, Mrs. Versie Montgomery Bragg. And this is her second heavenly birthday today. And if I were to say anybody who has inspired me the most, it was her. And she passed away the day after I graduated from Fielding. She waited long enough to see me graduate. And she had made it clear for many years that that's what she was going to do when I was in high school, and it looked like I was really going to go to college to do this. She and I did not know that it was going to be a very long path till I actually graduated with my PhD, because I took 2 years off between undergrad and graduate school for my master's degree, and then I took 5 years off between my master's and starting my PhD, which took 6 years to finish because of COVID. And she lived to be 102 to see that. Um, she also was she was a teen bride and a teen mom, and could not graduate from high school despite graduating. I mean, skipping 2 grades in grade school. She could not graduate from high school or even attend high school because of Jim Crow, Tennessee. All of them dared for me to dream bigger than the confines of my current environment. And I don't know, you might not be first generation, but just think of a time when you had a vision, you had a thought or a perspective that you yourself were the only one that shared. In the context of being not only a first generation high school, college, and PhD graduate in my family, that was very difficult to do. And because of the lack of the resources and the lack of understanding that the people in my community had about the pursuit of education. And as a result, my accomplishments to me mean nothing if I do not honor those that told me to go and to not stop. I'm nowhere the smartest, and but I will say that in the pantheon of people who have the sheer grit, courage, passion, and tenacity, I'm very much a force to be reckoned with. And that is it's only the reason why I ever was able to pursue any of these things and to accomplish it, especially at Fielding, given that half of my clinical training, the last half of it was during the global pandemic. I also told this story because I wanted faculty and dignitaries, laureates, and other people in admin that do not know the harm that they perpetrate when they encounter someone like me. I mean, there was a lot of sometimes because I'm also learning. Um, I had some struggles, and it was, in my experience, and I'm not speaking exclusively with Fielding, but in general, just made it very difficult to learn and to understand when I had struggles. And in the current landscape of reversing or repealing or erasing DEI efforts, even from an educational standpoint, I love that Fielding stands valiantly at the precipice of innovative social change and challenging the counters to social justice and equity initiatives. Some of my experiences with faculty and admin, or that there might be that they do not fully believe in DEI efforts, and maybe it's whatever, it challenges whatever internalized tenets of white supremacy they have and their proximity to comfort that they perceive DEI presents and challenges to their existence. And to that, I wanted to give the perspective of that you don't have to believe in DEI. You don't have to. You just need to believe in accessibility. If you cannot believe in the pursuit of social justice or even equality or in equity, at least keep the door open and not block it. You have no idea what you have in your midst, and you could be stifling something that could ultimately affect your ethos, your environment, your own trajectory, because you've limited the access to somebody else. And sometimes I also think about, given that my training's in clinical psychology, that harm is being done by challenging these efforts, whether you believe them or in them or not. And I could name countless events in my entire academic career that were anti-Black and racist, and as I reflect on some of the experiences that I had that were more harder. And similar experiences I have likely been encountered by others that look like me. And the result is that they quit, or they were ultimately denied access by whatever means, whether it be academic expulsion because of poor grades, or that they were shunned because they were perceived as not being a good fit. And in the grand scheme of things, psychology, APA came out with an apology 3 years ago and said that they apologized for perpetuating the systems of harm for people in training and in practice. And one of the awards I got was telling them to F off with that apology in those words, because the harm has long been done. It's still being done. And you're not, and the perspective that people who look like me or come from a racially or sexually marginalized, subjugated group, religious and other cultural pressures. The landscape of academia was never built for us. And so it's really easy for somebody who has very low acculturation to be perceived as somebody who wouldn't be a great fit. They're not. They are a great fit for the community they're trying to serve, and that can never be overlooked. And then there's some like me who endured, but to what extent and what consequence? And there's a study that just came out a few months ago that talked about that Black women in academia's average lifespan is 65. It's the age of retirement. And I too actually lost a member of my dissertation committee. She had recently retired and she was 65 when she died, and she was a Black lady. And stress, stress is not healthy. Grad school is already a stressful process by design. And I want that the story of what builds somebody to want to pursue a graduate degree and all of the steps that they have to take to get to that point are not lost in the message and the meaning by the time that they are a student faced with a faculty member for a particular class. And I don't want it to be lost. The mission is to educate. And specifically for clinical psychology is to train healers. Healers. I just want to wrap up by saying that my mission and my goal is simple. I do all of this, and I continue to, through tears, through my own struggles and strife, because I dream of a day when education does not equate to oppression for those that are often othered and harmed in the process and as a result of the education being taught. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Bragg, for sharing your story. We appreciate you. Thank you so very much. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Carrie Arnold, who graduated with a doctoral degree in human development in 2017. She has also had other roles at Fielding, and we're so glad that she's back to share her story and chapter.
Thank you, Elena, and thank you, fellow scholars. It's an honor to be here. My journey at Fielding actually began a long time ago, back at the tender age of 30 in the year 2000. I came to Fielding and got my first master's degree. My daughter was born before I graduated, and I didn't know if I would finish, but I powered through, and then I was stuck. I think Fielding was either stuck with me or I was stuck with Fielding. I returned to get my PhD many years later, and that led to, as my fellow scholar said, an afterlife of faculty roles at Fielding, which I still hold, and I'm honored to be a member of this community. You know, back when I started my studies long ago, I heard that the definition of poverty is not to be without things or money, it's to be without community. And the other thing I learned recently in 2017 was a quote by Rebecca Solnit, who said that the right to speak is a form of currency. And that has really tethered me to my academic career, and it has motivated me. And even hearing Dr. Bragg's story led to my research on voice and how voice is a currency that some do not have. And asking someone to speak up is often the equivalent of saying to someone with trauma, it's time to get over it. It just doesn't always work that way. And so my work was to understand the silenced and to understand what would take someone from silencing into voice. And so that was my dissertation. And then I started to speak on this topic. And when I got out into the world to speak on it, I was asked way too many questions that I could not answer because my dissertation was not broad enough. And so I went back to Fielding, and as a fellow, I broadened my research, did some postdoc, broadened it to include more women and more industries, which then led to me being able to have those answers more fully. But the audience was gone. I couldn't go back to those presentation audiences and say, now I think I know a little bit more to respond to your question. But, you know, I had support by so many that I decided to write the book that was eventually published by Roman and Littlefield, called Silenced and Sidelined, and how women leaders find their voices and break barriers. And to me, that was my gift back to the women who had shared their stories with me in leadership. And it was, and I guess I saw it more as a way to honor those who had participated in the research. But I really want to circle back to the life and the work and the journey at Fielding, that I would not have gotten to that place without the support of faculty who all along my journey were there for me. One of my first faculty members when I was at the tender age of 30 was Dr. Lenny Wildflower. And to be taught by her and then to return later and partner with her in the evidence-based coaching program, it was a full circle moment for me. And so finding my own voice occurred as I did the research, and Fielding has partnered with me every step of that way. And so I bring this back to say, writing the chapter, it occurred before many things surfaced after I finished my PhD. But when I go back and reread that chapter, I am reminded that Fielding is a very generous community, and I'm very proud to be part of it. So thank you. Thank you for having me here to speak on it.
Thank you, Dr. Arnold. Thank you for your remarks. And now it's my great, great pleasure to introduce our early graduate in human and organizational systems, somebody who got to know our Fielding founders and have journeyed with Fielding for a few years now. 1986 graduate with human organizational systems, Dr. Tracy Gibbons. We cannot hear you, Dr. Gibbons.
I didn't unmute myself. So thanks to all of you, and thanks to those of you who just in the course of the last hour have sent me notes and hellos and things like that. As Elena has already said, I graduated from Fielding in 1986, which means that I came to Fielding, which was then Fielding Institute, in 1983. This was not long after Fielding itself was founded in 1974, and even fewer years between then and 1979, when the HOD program, as it was then known, was founded. And so that means that for over half my life, I've been part of Fielding, and Fielding has been part of me. And that's actually kind of feels like a long time. At this age and stage, whatever I thought it would be like, this is not it. And so now what I am doing is trying to get a better grip on, better understanding of what it's like to be and what it means to be at this point in my life journey. I have a few good years left, I hope. Both my parents were in their 90s when they died a few years ago. But what I want to talk to you about today are the major elements in my life that came together in an integrated way to not only inform my educational process, but to, in a very important way, to define and develop who I was then and who I am now. It's still hard to get my head around all of this, that in June I will be 80 years old. It sort of makes me gasp. Um, so I've always been a learner and an eager learner at that, and I was very much encouraged, especially by my father, to certainly there was a clear expectation then that I would certainly go to undergraduate school, but that somehow wasn't enough for me, and it wasn't because anybody in particular insisted or encouraged me to keep going in my formal education. That's what I did. And I then eventually, at the time, I was working for the YMCA, which was my first career, and why I went to Springfield College, which was originally known as the International School for YMCA Workers. And I did that for the first about 11 years after I graduated. But that that whole process began to evolve for me when I was able, as a YMCA professional, to have a YMCA scholarship from the YMCA, and I went to George Williams College to do my master's degree. And so here's the trivia question for you: who was, in case someone should ever ask, who was the founder of the YMCA? And the answer is Sir George Williams, for whom George Williams College was named, and also Sir George Williams College in Canada. And I also was able to do a program that was run by NTL, formerly known as National Training Labs, called the Program for Specialists in Organization Development. And that was where my conversion process began. I was able also in my master's program to take some elective courses that were about consulting and organization development. And all of a sudden I had found a profession that was pretty much all of the things that I loved and enjoyed, and very few of the ones that I wasn't so crazy about. And so nobody was pushing me in any way, including my father, to become a PhD. And I don't think I would have been a scholar in the classic sense of that term, was it not for Fielding's unique learning model and the culture that enabled it, and the people who were the founders, both the original founders, Halleck and Frederick and Renata, and all of the founding faculty of the HOD program, I think all of whom I had the good fortune to spend my early Fielding years with, and to learn from, and to do assessments with. I also think that I probably wouldn't have ended up at a PhD program were it not for my then employer, which was Digital Equipment Corporation. Some of you may have heard of it, but possibly not all of you. Unfortunately, it met its demise, some years ago. But digital was a unique place to work, a place where many people aspired to work. It was the founder of an inventor and producer of what was then known as mini computers, as opposed to, say, IBM, that was making mainframes. And it had a very generous tuition reimbursement program, which gave me the opportunity to write a proposal to them, to go and come to Fielding and do that PhD program. And what I did was by then I had done a lot of research about Fielding, discovered that it had been recently accredited, which, of course, if you're going to get tuition reimbursement from someone, is probably an important factor, because accreditation matters. It's the gold standard for learning organizations. And so I looked at the available knowledge areas and how my advanced learning would be a further benefit to digital. By then I had worked for digital for I would say 6 years. I was into my third job because digital was growing like gangbusters, and so and also valued the work of organization development in the ways that it benefited the company. And so we were all moving fast and helping the company grow. And so I looked at what it was I was interested in and what it was that Fielding offered, and how all of that would be a benefit to digital as we all move forward together. Digital, I want to say, also had a very unique organization culture that in many ways overlapped with Fielding's organization culture and way of operating. And it made it easy for me to be moving between digital and Fielding in the years that I was at digital, and to have a ready supply of clients and opportunities that helped me to do both the parts of my assessments that were about in-depth learning and also about learning projects. And so those, it's hard to describe how meaningful those particular years were to me, for both my formal learning and development, but also all of my personal and professional learning and development. And there's a third piece that I want to mention and acknowledge about what was going on for me in those same years. And that was, I encountered a meditation practice at that same time. I happened on it soon after I started Fielding. Excuse me. And I would say I came upon it somewhat accidentally, or maybe coincidentally, if I were to believe in either accidents or coincidences, which I actually don't. And this practice has guided and enabled my personal and spiritual development. And as well, it continues to for all the years since the time I was an actual Fielding student. So what I've had in all of these years, these 40 amazing years, is feeling an experience at Fielding that was both intellectual and scholarly, a personal and spiritual development process, and one as a professional and a practitioner, all of which occurred simultaneously during a key developmental inflection point for me, and also for many other people at the age I was when I was at Fielding, which was my mid-30s, I would say. Many of the people at digital were part of that cohort, that age cohort, and many of us going through all kinds of development experiences, which were encouraged and supported and provided by the company. I'll add about digital, that digital had a formal DEI program before, as one would say, that was a thing. I don't know that we called it that, but there were many, many formal opportunities in digital provided by the company, designed by the company, staffed by other employees, that caused us to pay a lot of attention to both the diversity of gender and the diversity of race and color and ethnicity and national origin, and in many ways was a pioneer for those kinds of programs.
Thank you, Dr. Gibbons. I apologize to cut you short if I did. We're at the top of the hour, and many people need to hop off the call. We are recording this call, and we will post it on YouTube. If any of the authors wanted to stay and are able to stay longer, then please stay. If not, we will collect questions and we'll try to answer them the best way possible. Meanwhile, I don't see any questions in the chat, only wonderful, stellar comments. However, perhaps we can have one question, and if you wanted to ask that question, please raise your hand so I can spot the first person who raised their hand. And thank you so much, all the speakers today and all the guests.
And I just wanted to show the cover of the book so you can see what the book that we're talking about looks like. I put the link to the book to Amazon in the chat. So if you can just click on that link, you'll go straight to the page on Amazon where you can buy the book, and it's really it's a wonderful collection of stories by people who explain how the experience of feeling has been transformative for them, both not only in their education but also in their personal lives. And Elena, if I could add one more quick thing to that, if there is one common theme that comes from this book, is that so many people were surprised that even though they were enrolled in a distributed program, there was a unique sense of community. I mean, we talked about that during this hour, but that was the constant refrain from all these chapters that we collected, Elena and I, is that people were surprised that even though we all live in different cities, sometimes different places on Earth, that there was this unique sense of community, of belonging to a group of learners. And that sense of a community endures long after people graduate. And I think that was the main takeaway from the book, and I think a great source of inspiration for our current students, our past students, as well as our future students. Back to you, Elena.
Thank you so much, Jean-Pierre. It looks like we haven't had any questions. I think maybe people are still thinking about the stories, but we also want to be very respectful of everyone's time. We promised to close this call at 11 sharp, and we are 3 minutes, 11 sharp Pacific time. But anyway, at the top of the hour. So thank you all. Thank you, guests, students, faculty, alums, who are here, generous supporters, everyone who is continuing to champion fielding, for joining us on this community. Very special to have our trustees. I see Dr. Honnold, I see Dr. Sabrina Epps on the call. Very special when our public trustees join us. Thank you, Provost Williams, President Rogers, and many other university leaders. Have a wonderful day. Take good care of yourselves, and we'll see you in fielding spaces, in person, online, social media, all of that. And reach out to us at communications@fielding.edu with any questions and feedback. Thank you, everyone. Have a fabulous day. Good week. Take good
Thank
care.
you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.